Welcome once again to Lynda Rose. And there are two mighty events that's happening. Well, that's happened over the last week or so. One, of course, is the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, I think both of us have not watched this for years. And then suddenly we decided to watch it. Is that true?
Well, I watched it because I was asked to write an article about it in advance. So I thought, gosh, because I didn't really know very much about Eurovision Song Contest, I thought I'd better, you know, get a bit familiar with the songs and what they're doing. And I was absolutely shocked when I listened to all the songs, and they were all promoting messages of various kinds and were, to me, quite unpleasant, a lot of them. So that's why I started to watch it. Yeah, the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah. Did you la la to any of them? Could you sing any of the tunes afterwards?
Um, Sadly, no, but that probably says more about me, Rodney, because I don't have a very good memory for tunes. But I did like the Israeli entry.
You can't say that. Wash your mouth out.
Okay, but I still liked it.
Isn't it a shame that most of the rest of the world, I say that, but that's not strictly true, but certainly the young people, rest of the world, would have a go at you because, of course, they've been inculcated into left wing philosophies during primary school, secondary school, as was, and at universities, certainly. They know how to influence the youth, the wokists, don't they?
They do, and it really is quite disturbing. I mean, you mentioned universities, Rodney, and I'm based in Oxford, and we now have this sort of permanent camp outside one of the smaller museums on what's normally a nice green, but they've put up all their tents, and it's all Freedom for Palestine, and it's it's so intimidating, Rodney. And I think so many of the Jewish community are actually really scared at seeing all these things coming about. So it's a very unhealthy atmosphere. And I think you're right, children are being indoctrinated and they don't fully understand anything of what's gone on. We've seen, haven't we, this week with the arrest warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it's appalling that they are equating the slaughter that happened on October the 7th of innocent Israelis with an attempt by the Israelis to defend themselves and to find the perpetrators. And yet this is being sold in the media as, evil Israelis committing genocide for no reason. Or, it's all their fault in the first place.
Yeah, it's frightening, and you can't engage in conversation with most of the people there that are wearing masks. Now, if somebody came from another universe as a television commentator, the first question he would ask, why are you wearing a mask? I mean, surely somebody sees through this, but the authorities don't see through it or choose not to see through it. These are dystopian times, Lynda.
They're very dystopian times, Rodney. A very good description, that.
Well, let's go back to the Eurovision Song Contest. And some people, certain commentators, have said there were Satanist influences there, pointing to Ireland in particular and others.
I think I pointed this out to Rodney. I mean, the Irish entry was completely bizarre. This a woman with the unlikely name of Bambi Thug, who I can't remember exactly how she describes herself, but it was something along the lines of a gothic gremlin, something or other witch. And the imagery was just so satanic. And she had symbols painted all over her body in what was apparently Ogham, which is an ancient Irish dialect. And they were saying apparently things like Free Palestine and various other calls to do nasty things to Israel. So one can only assume that she was attempting to cast a spell. And if I don't know, she had a male dancer with her who had complete little horns and sort of filed teeth and really horrible makeup, which I think to a child would be utterly terrifying. So it really was like a demonic ceremony that was going on. And to me, it was appalling that all the crowds were applauding them so enthusiastically, because, you know, what they're doing actually is applauding something that is demonic.
The crowds being mainly, the shots of the crowds were young people. Now, we're not having a go at young people. We're having a go at the generation above young people who are really responsible for this and for the rearing of our young people. And when one looks at the figures, broken marriages and breakups of marriages, etc., we're lacking parental guidance, let's say, big time in the country. And when we've got a country that seems to reward or not incentivize stable marriage conditions, our tax laws are absolute rubbish compared with many other countries who would say, oh, well, yeah, let's look after the little ones at least until they get to age 7, and we'll give you special child allowances, etc. But forget that in Britain, they'd sooner get the mum back to work at any cost and pay them terrifically high nursery payments that we have in Britain because of our laws again. We've passed through difficult times, and maybe Rishi has surprised us all, and we've got the election. I tell you what, I am truly terrified, because if you think it was bad under Tories, and I'm talking from the Judeo-Christian position now, you've got to see what's going to happen, knowing where socialism in many areas is based. And it's not in Christianity. Some parts of it are based in communism, dare one say.
Well, yes, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, Rodney, and I think of particular concern have been some of the policies that have come out over literally the last few days. And I mean, an example of this is the consultation now being held into the new statutory guidance for sex education, which, as I said, it's out for consultation at the moment. And it is good because in response to the Cass report, it has said that there must be no more teaching of gender choice, and children must not be encouraged to transition in any way, and children have to be recorded according to their biological sex, not gender. And it's just it's very much the guidance is trying to protect children against ideological manipulation, basically. And Labour have come out and said that they will not support the guidance. They have said that they support all teaching being age appropriate. But of course, you don't know what they mean by age appropriate. And then on the back of that statement that they weren't going to support the guidance, they then, a couple of days ago, put forward a proposal to make gender choice much easier. So instead of having 2 doctors medically assess and then recommend giving of a gender certificate, only 1 doctor will be required to give approval. And that doctor may or may not be a gender specialist. And they have openly said it could just be the local GP. Now, can you imagine the overworked GP who actually doesn't really know very much about gender transitioning and doesn't want to even, thank you very much. Somebody trots into the surgery, says, I want to change gender. Will you sign this? Oh, yeah, let's get rid of them. Let's get on to somebody who's ill. You know, this is just, it's potty. Now, if you put that against what they're saying about education, I think the only proper conclusion you can come to is that they're going to keep pushing gender choice for children. So it really is, it's quite frightening what they're proposing. And every policy that, actually, I shouldn't say every policy, because I'm sure there must be some that are exceptions. A lot of the policies that Labour have been endorsing recently by Keir Starmer, it's been stated unequivocally they are going to do this. And then a couple of days later, there has been a complete about face. And I think a really good example of that is the local elections that we've just had. Because up till that point, Labour had been very supportive of the line we were taking towards Israel. And Israel has an absolute right to defend themselves, which must be supported. Very good. After the elections, apparently there was a huge outcry from the Muslim community who refused to vote for them. So now Labour are saying, oh dear, how can we win back the Muslim vote? Well, we know how they can win back the Muslim vote. So again, we are seeing, I think, doors being opened that will not actually protect the security of our country and will not protect the well-being of individuals. So I am not optimistic at thought of a Labour government. I don't wish to be party political here, because I wouldn't actually sort of recommend the Tory government for a lot of the things that they've done. But I do fear what the outcome will be if Labour, on their current trajectory, get in now, because I think we will have, in education, I think we will see increased sexualization of our children rather than less, because they will say this is keeping them safe. Now, it does not keep children safe from age 4 and 5 to start teaching them the mechanics of sex. It just sexualizes them and opens them up to this whole, pornography, to abusive relationships, to just basically being lost as individuals.
The basic lie of LGBT and their like are saying that the children must be aware of these things, even from age 3, 4, and 5, so that they can become protected. That is the biggest, most wicked lie I can think of. They're promoting it. And you can't handle early child's minds in any other way than we've done for centuries. But the Trojan horse is in there well and truly. And I can't see the next government, which is almost certainly, they say, to be Labour, doing anything but perpetuating the present normality, which is appalling.
I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, what we really ought to be doing is protecting the innocence of children and giving them a space to just grow, to, test the boundaries of who and what they are. And we should be giving them a really safe and secure environment so that they can just have fun and learn, but learn in a healthy way. But you're absolutely right, Rodney, that just this argument that they have to know all the details so that they can be protected, it's deeply, deeply disturbing to children, actually, and it does destabilize them.
It's a peculiar thing. I'm thinking of bringing back the bicycle shed society. Now, many years ago, we were told that's how you learn about young ladies. It's behind the bicycle shed. Well, that was well known in the north, but you're from a different world in the south. I don't know whether that pertains, but we didn't have the imposition of all this sexual teaching. It was left to parents. And in the ladies, the girls' school, obviously for mechanical reasons, let's say, they were introduced to this in the correct way. Now, yeah, there are dangers of taking your first kiss behind the bicycle shed, but you soon learn the dangers. Maybe we've gone too much the other way. So I don't know how many people are going to sign up to this new society, but they are. There's an offer. on a more serious note, going back to the Eurovision Song Contest, we were arranging. Now I'll take you back, Lynda, and I'll remind you of where we were and where we are, because more and more people are saying now we are being more and more controlled by them, whoever them may be. Certainly, them is the European Union, these unelected folk that try and rule us, or did, or some people say still do, because we're not out of the European Union by a long way in Great Britain yet. Whether we finally get out, perhaps that's up to Sir Keir to decide. Many thoughts on that one. But
I think Keir wants us back, actually, Rodney. That's another policy change.
I am absolutely sure of that. And many other people are as well. Now, back to Eurovision Song Contest, we had the privilege of take you back to Dana. She was the first homegrown, albeit from Ireland, star with a delightful little song. And there was another contestant on that night who was an English star, and everybody thought the English star would get it. Mary Hopkins was her name. And this Dana won it with this little girl's song. I was furious at the time. Different music, yes. Then, about 30 years later, we met up with Dana because we were putting on a concert, especially to be filmed. And it was quite a long concert, and she stayed with us actually for a few days. And we got to talking because she was 8 years in the European Union headquarters in Brussels as an MEP. And she revealed the truth, what happens behind Eurovision doors and how things are adjusted, let's say, and how anti-family the whole setup is of Europe, because Europe's got their little fingers in every pie, even to Eurovision. There were occasions, because she was very pro-family, that she was literally pinned up against a wall and told to change her views physically. Now, that is awful. If this is democracy, what is the autocracy? And we've got a situation here, and we're not blaming Europe for everything. Maybe lots of countries in Europe, and I think this personally, have got things a lot righter than the United Kingdom have. So therefore, we must do something about it. So we can do something about it by voting, of course, and praying and making the right decisions as far as we're led. But is there anything else we should be doing in the form of being salt in this world? Salt is very cleansing, but sometimes it hurts.
Well, it does. I think whenever we have the opportunity, we really do need to be making our voices heard, Rodney. I mean, yes, we're all going to be called to vote soon, and that's one way of trying to do things. But as these issues come up, it's important that we don't just let things happen. We don't take the attitude, well, it's going to be, so what difference does it make if I say anything or not? No, if we take that attitude, inevitably we're going to lose. So whatever issue comes up, we need to make a nuisance of ourselves. So, contact the MPs, sign petitions, go on demonstrations, but don't be silenced. And in day-to-day conversation with people, and I do think this is a big problem these days. There is so much intimidation from the LGBT lobby that nobody dare express if they have any views that are at all counter, even if there's a deeply held religious views, they're simply trying to say what it says in the Bible. A lot of people today just take the attitude of, well, it's going to cause trouble, so I'll just keep my head down, I'll just keep quiet. And I've been guilty of that sometimes. But we mustn't. It's about time we were proud of who we are and of what we believe, and that we stand up without any fear of intimidation, not being aggressive, but just stating clearly what it is that we believe and what we think is the best way that will actually benefit society. And parents should really make an effort to find out what it is that their kids are being taught in school. And as you know, we run Parent Power. And so many parents have said to me, oh, this is shocking. And they say, well, I don't really believe it's happening. So you show them the stuff and they say, oh, okay. But that's happening in someone else's school. It doesn't affect my kids. I'm sorry, it does affect their kids. And parents have a responsibility to find out what it is that their children are being taught and to kick up a fuss if it is against our belief and if it's going to endanger the child. We've just carried out a survey on Christian belief and the practice of belief in this country. And a very high percentage of parents, Christian parents, said that they did not feel any longer that they had the freedom to pass on their belief to their children. Because when they go to school, they're immediately taught the exact opposite. And of course, when you're in a class with, I know, 20 more peers who are all taking that view because they believe what the teacher says, it's very, very hard for a child to actually say, well, actually, my family believes, they're being coerced into accepting something that is actually often directly counter to Christian belief. And at so many different levels. It's not just sexuality that we're talking about here, Rodney. So many different levels. So we need to start standing up for what it is we actually believe. As I say, not aggressively, but just quietly stating our truth in love and refusing to back down.
Yes, we should be stubborn beasties on certain occasions. In the last 48 hours, Lynda, there's been an announcement from Ireland, Finland, and Spain here. And that announcement has said that we should recognize immediately the Palestine state, Gaza, and that's it, full stop. Now, there are wicked implications here that most people are probably not aware of. You've mentioned one of them, that horrendous 7th of October situation, which carries on. Let's be honest, why aren't they releasing the hostages? They're responsible more than anybody. Israel want to get rid of Hamas, which is hardly surprising. You probably heard the Americans decided under Biden that we've got to get more and more food and water into Gaza, and we're going to build a pier. The pier was finished a week ago. There's been lots and lots of major tankers and ships dropping things off. Nearly 3/4 of the stuff they've dropped off has been stolen by Hamas and co. Now, people are not aware of this. The majority of Gaza, Palestinians, are actually in favor of what Hamas is doing. Why should these wretched politicians recognize this sort of terrorist state? The world is going mad.
Yes, the world is going. I think we're in a very dangerous world at the moment. I think the announcement that you've just spoken about, Rodney, it is overtly rewarding terrorism. It's saying this is how you behave, this is how you go on. And it is not protecting in any way the victims of terrorism. And that really is shocking. And it's going to have huge repercussions for the rest of the world, actually, because it's been well said that, Hamas, they're very, very hostile to Israel. They've said overtly they want to wipe them off the face of the earth. But they're also very, very hostile to Christians and also want to subjugators, let's put it that way. In so many parts of the world, we are seeing terrible persecution against Christians. We're seeing Christians losing their lives even. And the end result, if you really affirm a group like Hamas, is to say, oh, that's okay, carry on. So actually, we should be really worried by what's going on here. And we really should be supporting Israel in dealing with Hamas. Of course, one feels sympathy for what's happening to the people of Palestine. And I take your point, Rodney. I saw the recent poll that said 76% of all Palestinians supported Hamas up to the hilt. That's shocking. It's a difficult one because one does want to help those who are suffering. But your point is absolutely right, that Hamas have deliberately courted this because they are making political gain from the messages. They're always portraying themselves as victims. So actually, the more they can say there is slaughter going on in Palestine, for them, that's victory. And they're winning more and more. And of course, we've all seen the data that says that Hamas have actually falsified hugely the reports of casualties that there've been, and the reports of children who are suffering. Of course, some children have been wounded, and that really is awful. And I care very deeply about children. But they have courted this, deliberately putting their quarters, headquarters, underneath hospitals, underneath schools, so that the only way they can be reached is by blowing up those places. This is actually, it's a very hard-nosed plan to solidify opinion against Israel so that they can bring about their aim of wiping them off the face of the earth. And we should be frightened by this. And by and large, in the West, we are so stupidly gullible because we have accepted the propaganda that Israel is being cruel and evil in trying to defend themselves. What are they supposed to do? When that terrible slaughter on October the 7th, should they just have said, oh, well, never mind, carry on? And we know that the hostages have been kept in the most appalling conditions. We know that the women have been serially raped. We know that Hamas uses rape as a weapon of war. And that we know there appear to be very few of them that are actually still surviving. Those that do are going to be very scarred emotionally and psychologically when they come out. And I was reading a report only a couple of days ago about Hamas fighters in hospital in Israel moaning because they were shackled to their beds and saying this was inhumane and terrible. And my immediate thought was, well, you're receiving hospital care. You're being treated, whatever it is that's wrong. You're being looked after, and you're moaning because justifiably you're being handcuffed to a bed. What about what you've been doing to the Israeli hostages? And we know that, they've been kept deep underground, they've been kept in small cages, they've been given very little food, they have been kept in silence, and they have been raped, they have been beaten. There's just no comparison, Rodney. And yet we persist in affirming Hamas in what they're doing by these lunatic policies of, and they shouldn't be endorsed at the moment. As I say, to now recognize Palestine as a state because of what's happened is affirming, endorsing, and promoting terrorism, and it will spread. We're seeing it in our own country, with all these pro-Palestinian rallies that are really, there's a lot of violence in them, a lot of aggression, a lot of intimidation. You've already referred to the so many of them covering their faces with these balaclavas. There's a reason for that. These are not actually nice people. And the Jewish community is justifiably afraid, but we should be afraid. We should be defending them against this. And our police are very much to blame for not taking appropriate action to stop this intimidation, this violence, this bullying that's going on now in the name of freeing Palestine.
Let's draw a line under this and look at the prime ministers of the European countries in particular. There are a small number of Christians. Their attitude is quite different than one finds in the vast majority of countries, including the United Kingdom. There is an answer. Yes, we've got to pray for our politicians and leaders. That's certainly one. Maybe we should, in this sense, mix politics with religion, because is this one way of getting the Christian voice over?
Well, yes. I have always believed if we had continued upholding our values as Christian values and acknowledging rather than affirming that we are a Christian country that should be informing our politics, we wouldn't be facing the problems that we are now. And we would also be able to deal with this current anti-Semitism that is exploding onto our streets, which shouldn't be. So we should bring our faith more clearly, I think, back into our way of life and our modus operandi, if you like. We should let Christian principle inform it more clearly.
Without over criticizing our politicians, maybe the biggest blame should be placed against your church. You're a priest in the Church of England. They say nothing. Well, that's not strictly true. They appear to be taking the side of Hamas in many things.
Well, it's not just Hamas, it's so many things. Climate change has become a new religion. I honestly do believe that if the church were to stand up and proclaim the faith that is called to do, we would not be seeing the problems that we are in this country. But you're absolutely right. We have become very woke as a church. We try to, we worship the prevailing views of the culture. And we have abandoned belief in God because of that. And it is wrong. And I don't think God is going to put up with this for much longer, to be honest. I think the established church is hugely under threat in this country, and deservedly so. But I do think that God is acting now to recall his church, his remnant church. He is rebuilding it. And I think there is tremendous encouragement, actually, in Christianity in this country. I think it's growing. I think people are beginning to wake up to what it is they really believe and are beginning to stand on that. And there's whole, pockets all over the country where worship is fantastic. There are fellowships growing up, but they are often apart from established denominations. That was something our survey found, actually. We had, I think, about 1,600 responses before we closed it. And the majority of those, because this was just for Christians, they're all Christian, the majority identified as not belonging to any denomination because they were joining together with their fellow Christians, but outside the denominational structures. which is exciting, Rodney.
It is. It's exciting and it's very interesting, that point. And let's finally say that when you have a church that is the state church and should be influencing a government for good, and yet they've got the chief guy who is responsible for appointing bishops in the Anglican Church is an open homosexual. The appointees he's made are basically influenced, I believe, and many others, by that fact. The lady that at the moment is running out of tissues in the inquiry over the sub postmasters, you've got to say, should she ever been appointed there? But she was a priest in the Anglican Church,
I think she still is.
And still is. And I'm informed was one of the leading members about to be given the bishopric of London.
Mm.
It is frightening where the church is, Lynda.
I agree. The church is too important to be given up to what is happening at the moment. People, Christians, need to repent of where we have let things slide and come back to a reliance on God, and insofar as we are able, a total obedience to God. And that way we can actually get out of this mess. And we are in a mess. You know, I look around society today and it's dreadful. We need to come back to God. Only God can save us and deliver us from this mess that we have created.
Yeah, don't blame God, please.
No.
Lynda, it's been the usual joy. You've cheered me up, really, because there are many good souls out there that, regrettably, in one sense, have their own fellowships because they cannot find the established church meets their needs, but they're still there. And maybe it's all a toughening up exercise so that Christians can have even more influence.
Yes, I think there's a lot to be hopeful for, Rodney. God is here. He is building us up. He is preparing us. He is teaching us lessons. He will be glorified.
Yeah, we've read the last page. We've already won. Lynda, thank you so much. We'll see you shortly.
Thank you, Rodney. God bless.